Hey, welcome back to Limitless TV. Why do lottery winners always end up blowing their money? Hey friends, Stephen Michael Miller here. Why do lottery winners often blow through their earnings? Well, really it comes down to who they are as an individual when they receive their money. I mean, let's talk about this real quick. And when we're talking about financial freedom and financial abundance or creating wealth in a number of different ways, real estate and so many others, most of us are programmed in a very specific way, right? You've got your parents. Your parents had a very specific way of going about life and talking about financially. They had a very specific way that they approached their financial lives. Most of us as kids, we didn't necessarily sit down with our parents and they didn't necessarily teach us the ins and outs of how they managed their money or how they spent their money or how they budgeted or didn't budget. Most children don't go through that type of an education. And because of that, we just kind of receive through osmosis, through observation, and learning that way what they do. Oftentimes, that's what we'll do as well. We'll take what we saw, what we observed, what we are learning from them, and we'll implement it in our own lives, not really even thinking about it. It's kind of one of those things we do on autopilot. So we get to the situation where we're just implementing the same things that we've observed and learned. Lottery winners are just like you and I. They've learned from their past, they've learned from their experiences, they've learned from their parents. And just because you get a large influx of money doesn't change your programming. It doesn't change what you learned from the past. In other words, this would be kind of like taking a Commodore 64 and trying to run Adobe Photoshop on it. Now, hopefully you know what a Commodore 64 is. If you don't, go look it up on the internet. It's one of those old computers, right? Those box computers. You had to type in commands. You had the floppy disks, if you ever remember those. If you're in my generation, you might remember those. If you're a little younger, you may not. But a Commodore 64, I mean, my phone right here, which is a lot smaller than a Commodore 64, my phone has probably 100,000 times the computing power, maybe 1,000,000 times the computing power as a Commodore 64, right? So the problem is we're taking these old systems and we're trying to run sophisticated programming on it, right? We're taking our old financial beliefs, our old financial makeup, and when we all of a sudden get all this money, we're trying to run a new program on an old, antiquated system. It just doesn't mesh. It won't even run, right? If you try to take a Photoshop and put it on a Commodore 64, no image will come up. You can't even put the disk anywhere or download it from the internet because the Commodore 64 didn't have internet capabilities and it didn't have a CD-ROM, right? None of those things were even part of it. And so when someone wins the lottery that doesn't have the financial aptitude, they haven't been taught financially how to excel in life, how to create true wealth, they'll take their current programming, they'll take all of those funds, all that money that they're now getting, and they'll do with it the same as what they did with their paycheck that they got week to week, right? So whether it's $100 or $1,000 or $1 million that you're earning a week, it doesn't really matter. You're going to act with it based on your current programming, your belief system, what you learn of how to deal with finances with your parents. So if you're paycheck to paycheck with $1,000 a week, you're going to be paycheck to paycheck with $100,000 a week, right? If you're paycheck to paycheck with $40,000 a year, you'll be paycheck to paycheck if you win the lottery and all of a sudden you've got $5 million in your bank account. You're still going to act as though you're paycheck to paycheck. We see this all the time. And the lottery mentality isn't one that's just had in the lottery. You often see the lottery mentality in sports, right? Professional sports. Think about it. You've got these young kids who grew up and they've worked their whole life, worked really hard in a specific sport. Let's say basketball or football or baseball or whatever that sport may be. And they've worked their whole lives at that sport really, really hard, but oftentimes they come from poor backgrounds, right? I mean, I came from a poor background. I get it, right? We're often told we can't afford it. And oftentimes in our mind, we think to ourselves, man, if I ever run into money, when I get that, I'm buying a house. I'm going to get my car. Right? I'm going to hook my friends up and my buddies up. I'm going to get them things that they need. I'm going to buy my mom a house. We all have that kind of those desires and those wishes and goals. And if you jump from that mentality all of a sudden to having a whole lot of money to back that up, what do? Well, you do all those things without thought of what it could mean, without thought of the tax implications, without the thought of how can I continue to grow this and leave a legacy for my children? Because it's not part of your thought process. And so you see this with oftentimes these young individuals who get into these professional sports. All of a sudden they sign a contract for $21 million over the next 5 years, or $80 million over the next 5 or 6 years, and they come into all this money and they start to fulfill a lot of these dreams which don't have a whole lot of substance, and they have no true backing or ability to grow them financially and to grow their wealth. And they don't even realize that they'll actually be able to help a whole lot more people down the road and even in the immediate if they will take that money and do with it what they don't even know how to do because they've never been taught. And so it's this eternal round, right? In order to really be able to handle those lottery winnings, in order to be able to handle coming into wealth, whether it's an inheritance or a lottery or whatever, or even be able to handle you earning more money, in order to be able to do that, you have to change that programming. You have to swap out the Commodore 64 for a brand new, upgraded, top-of-the-line computer that can handle those functions. You have to learn those things, learn how to manage your money, learn how to grow your money in order to be able to actually do it once you get there. So why do lottery people squander their money? Well, if they're squandering their money and they're paycheck to paycheck right now, whether they're, like I said, even if they're only earning a few $100s a week, if they're squandering that all and they're living paycheck to paycheck, they're going to do the same thing until they learn how to function in that sphere, until they learn how to save money with the few $100s they're making a week right now. They're not going to learn all of a sudden to save that money when they come into a whole lot more of it. So it's all about who you are, what you've learned, and the principles that you're enacting on a daily basis. If you were to come into the lottery and you find yourself in that situation ever, my recommendation for you would be get a financial mentor as fast as you can. Don't even spend $1. Like put a stop on it, get something in place so that you don't spend $1 until you get yourself educated to a point where you can act responsibly for it. Otherwise, you may find yourself in the exact same position that everyone else does. And by the way, everyone says they won't do that, right? Everyone says, man, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would do so many amazing things. And a lot of people say that, but they haven't put that plan in place. They haven't gotten properly educated. So that's really the reason why people blow through their money who win the lottery, is because they don't have that financial underpinning. They don't have that foundation. They haven't learned how to handle that, what to do with that money, how to properly invest it, how to grow it for themselves, how to leave a legacy with that amazing windfall. And so they blow it all. All right, friends, if you have other ideas of why maybe lottery winners blow their money, please share it in the comments below. Subscribe, click on the little bell, ring the bell. We'd love to hear from you. And have a fantastic day, and we'll see you on the next one.